Joining me today for our review of the Sunday newspapers, two guests I hope are opinionated, but not the rest of those things. The Civil Liberties campaigner Shami Chakrabarti and the leader of the UK Independence Party, Nigel Farage. And so to the front pages. Well, there's a lot of coverage of that Millie Dowler case, which we'll come on to later on. Some of the other front pages, Sunday Telegraph, their Olympic tickets farce, and saying that the middle classes are going to lose their stranglehold on places in England at church schools. They seem to be running a civil liberties campaign at the top of the paper. Free Pashmina, it says. I don't know what Pashmina has been done or where she's been imprisoned, but there we are. Sunday Times, crime maps expose your local thieves. Also got an Olympics ticket story there, and that secret tape about on Chris Huhne that you were hearing about in the news as well. The Observer, middle classes are going to pay, or should pay, £35,000 for old age care. This is a new proposal coming out, and there's just one of the many front page headlines about Millie Dowler. A lifetime of killing, says the Sunday Express, suggesting that there are other cases involved. Well, Shami Chakrabarti and the head of UKIP, Nigel Farage, both with us to talk about all of that. Where should we start?
Well, I suppose we ought to carry on with the Dowler story, because it is dominating so much debate this weekend, front pages and inside stories in a number of the papers. I think that Lord MacDonald's contribution was one of the more thoughtful ones. I have to say, this is not easy stuff at all. He's quite right that it's always going to be an ordeal to be a victim or a witness in the justice system, in the criminal justice system. The question is how you can balance the fair trial rights of the defendant with some dignity for those who have to participate as victims and witnesses.
Millie's sister said that the day the family were cross-examined by the defence QC was the worst day of their lives, even worse than the day when they found that Millie's body had been
Wasn't that because of the coverage of it? I mean, I'm just struck, Shami, that privacy has dominated our national debate over the last couple of months, with super injunctions and with criminals not being deported because of their rights to privacy and family lives. And in this whole human rights agenda that we're living under, this poor family have had no privacy whatsoever. Isn't there an argument? Isn't there an argument to say, OK, I accept what Ken MacDonald says, that a defendant must be able to use whatever tools he or she needs. Isn't there an argument in a case like this to say that you don't have press coverage until after the verdict has been reached?
Well, the problem with that, then, is that people feel that it isn't open justice. And we have, for example, in-camera hearings in family law cases, and you see newspaper campaigns about the injustice of secret justice.
But
now,
this is a jury, though, isn't it? I mean, this is 12 people sitting there that ultimately have to make a decision.
Absolutely.
And I would have thought that actually could happen without press coverage.
Well, it could, and it's possible that can happen in certain very sensitive cases. But we've also, in this country, since 9/11 and all that, been moving more and more towards secret justice. And in something as important as the criminal justice system, both for victims and the wider public and for defendants, we tend to want to see justice done, and not just wait for a conclusion to emerge when the smoke goes up. Very difficult stuff here. What I think is interesting about so much commentary in the papers is that there's a suggestion that the police are pointing fingers at the lawyers and the lawyers are pointing fingers at the police. Clearly this whole experience was miserable from the Dowler family, from the moment they were interviewed as witnesses to the media coverage, to the experience of being cross-examined in court. And I think that it's easy for everyone to point fingers at other aspects of the system. It's much harder to come up with anything that's really constructive.
Well, one thing that's been come up with by both the family and indeed the killer's daughter is the death penalty. I mean, this has been talked about again. Any possibility whatsoever? We've had referendums and all sorts of things. Is this ever going to come back, do you think?
Well, it won't, of course, if we're part of the European Union, because membership of that expressly forbids the death penalty. But even taking that out of it, I think there's been a big change in attitudes in this country about the death penalty, and I just detect that amongst the younger generation there is no great desire for it. And I suspect if we had a referendum on the death penalty, I think now, albeit narrowly, the country would actually reject it.
It's interesting, yeah.
I agree with that too. It's only China and America that have odd ideas about the death penalty.
Let's turn to your next story. Michael Gove, who's coming on later on. this looming classroom strike?
Well, I mean, the last few weeks we've seen government U-turns, and there have been one or two comments saying, well, is this like the Heath government? Is it really in trouble? Well, the big confrontation, it seems, starts this Thursday with nearly 750,000 public sector workers going on strike over pension reforms, and Michael Gove, who's your guest later, is right in the front line of this. He's got a tough week coming up, and The Independent are suggesting that he's going to get really tough, and he's going to CRB check parents, and he's going to find something constructive for children to do at school on Thursday. I sense that this confrontation with the public sector unions over these reforms could really be the acid test of this coalition.
Certainly the Sunday Telegraph is calling for major changes to the law. Let's keep moving on, because we haven't got a certain amount. Crime maps you've chosen here, Shami.
Well,
explain to us what crime maps actually are.
I picked this because I think this is one of those non-stories that is put out as a kind of macho piece of posturing. We are told that there's going to be a website, or there is a website, a government-sponsored website, and this website is going to contain the names and the convictions and the hometowns of adult offenders and tell us what they've been convicted for. Excuse me, haven't local newspapers been doing this for years? And the junior minister in the Home Office says he's going to take on the civil liberties lobby and take on the advice. Well, not personally, but yes. And what I think is more revealing than the information itself on this website is the fact that in one of the worst recessions that this country has ever faced, everybody, opposition and government, busy posturing on law and order, often with relatively minor tweaks to existing.
They're confusing signals, though, aren't they? Because tough today, but a few weeks ago they were talking about halving sentences for those that admitted guilt. So they're very conflicting signals.
Is it possible to have a rational debate about law and order? Discuss.
Discuss. Well, is it possible to have a rational debate about the Greeks at the moment? Discuss. It's a great headline you showed from the Sunday Express there, Nigel.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point about this is
Greeks facing a Spartan future. Boom, boom.
Yeah, I mean, my own view of it is that Greece is bust. She can't possibly meet her debt repayments. The sooner she gets out of the euro, reorganises her debts, the better. That's my own view of it. But I think the real story here is that Greece has had its democracy literally stripped from it. They can't make decisions anymore. They're being told by the bully boys in Brussels, you must accept this austerity package.
The home of democracy, after all.
Well, that's right, that's right. And of course they're taking to the streets in big numbers. There's been very significant level of violence, and the big vote comes on Tuesday, because the Greek Parliament votes on Tuesday whether to accept the measure or not. And it is just a desperately sad situation, because this country, which should never have joined the euro, is now being kept inside an economic prison.
And David Cameron has said that we're not going to be involved in the next stage of the bailout.
Well, yeah, I mean, he said that because we're not in the eurozone, we haven't got to help. Look, we've already committed 12 billion sterling of UK taxpayers' money to the bailouts of Portugal and Ireland. Through our membership of the IMF, we'll be helping with this Greek bailout. And perhaps to make matters even worse, Cameron is backing Christine Lagarde to take over from Dominic Strauss-Kahn, somebody who'll take over the IMF, who will help with these bailouts. So it is going to cost us money.
Meanwhile, we've got the Chinese premier in this country, and the Chinese are buying up most of southern Europe, as far as I can tell.
They seem to be looking to buy some influence as well, and so the Chinese are saying that they will buy up Greek bonds. That's fine. It may mean that the Greeks are able to borrow yet more money, but what it won't do is get back to the basic problem, that the debt repayment level that the Greeks are facing is simply too high. Yeah.
Well, I had on the subject of the Chinese
Ai Weiwei,
it's just
the artist.
Yesterday I had one of those aha moments, because I read that the Chinese premier is due in London for talks at Number 10, and of course this sets the release on bail, only on bail with conditions, of Ai Weiwei a few days ago in context. And of course we have a piece in The Independent by Paul Vallely saying yes, he's free on bail, but what about all the others in China, all the other prisoners of conscience? What about the other human rights problems in China? I was kind of brought up to believe that with economic progress will come progress on human rights. That doesn't seem to be universally the case.
So if they buy Greek bonds, we can turn a blind eye to all of this. Well, is that what you're saying?
I guess I am worried that, will we be less critical, will we be less campaigning in relation to human rights violations in China that set all our problems, so much in the shade if China owns Europe.
Only time for a couple more. Nigel Farage, you'd chosen, I think, the tickets.
Well, it's been a big...
Lots of ticket stories everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, huge debate. Everybody thinks it's a farce, and the story that hasn't yet come out, but has today on the front page of a Sunday Telegraph, is that another one of the great benefits of our European Union membership is that we pay the total cost for the Olympic Games, but we cannot make sure the tickets just go to UK people, British taxpayers. We have to share them with the rest of the European Union because of single market rules. And I think this is going to make people who've applied for tickets and haven't got them hopping mad.
You are incredible. You manage it
every time. But it's true, you see.
Well, I didn't get my tickets, so I'm going to blame the Europeans
there you are.
for that.
Here's a story now. I want to hear a European aspect to this story. Andy Kershaw. Well, this is a week where we think about music a lot. Glastonbury's going on. Andy Kershaw, a very much admired DJ on BBC. Terrible time in his private life, and he's now telling all. Is that right?
Well, he writes actually quite a positive story. It's not something that many of us would want to do, to expose the blood and guts of a difficult family experience. But he writes quite touchingly in the Mail Review about how his life was in tatters, really, because of marital trouble and actually being refused custody to his children, which I think is a really important point, because there are legal aid reforms going through at the moment, which would mean there would be no legal aid in custody disputes between parents, because this is not seen as important. And
he was on his uppers at this point.
He was on his uppers, and to be refused access to your child, I think, is one of the worst things that can happen. You need some legal advice.
Very quick final thought. Glastonbury. I don't see you as a Glasto boy, Nigel.
No, not quite my thing, but a wonderful picture of Nancy Delalio being taken along in a wheelbarrow, and just a reminder that we thought that we were never going to see rain again this summer, and here it is. It's June, it's raining hard, it's mud at Glastonbury, and thank goodness for the roof at Wimbledon, because the tennis is still going on.
Absolutely right. Well, on that meteorological note, thank you both very much, and to the weather.